Hello and welcome to this very special first ever primarily video edition of the Gaaays Manifesto. I am super excited to be joined by Dan Deevy, who is the creator of Gaaays in Space. I figured
Yes,
I'd
I love that you said the name properly. Like
well,
some
it's
people,
important.
they just, some people just don't get it. They think like, well, why'd you put so many A's in it? And it's like, because when you read it, you're supposed to sing it in your brain. And without the extra three A's, you will not sing it in your brain. So thank you very much for getting it right and for
It is
singing the name.
my pleasure. I was talking to my fiance earlier, and she was like, "Oh, who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's this really cool thing. It's Gaaays in Space." And she's like, "Why are you saying it like that?" I was like, "Look at how it's spelled. That's what it is."
Like,
So,
just have a mini stroke or something? Are you okay? Like, no, trust me, it's in the name. Gaze in space. So,
so take a minute and tell me what this whole thing is all about.
absolutely. So, Gaze in Space was started last August during the big Creation Entertainment Star Trek convention in Vegas. And it was right after it was revealed that the character of Sulu was going to be gay in Star Trek Beyond. And as a lifelong Star Trek fan and a pretty much lifelong gay man, it took me a little while, but for the
Right.
majority, um, it was a major deal. I thought it was a major deal. And there was nothing really happening around it. I felt like it was this historic moment that was being passed over. Just like, oh, yeah, whatever, gays are in Star Trek now. I was like, whoa, 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 everybody. Gays are in Star Trek now. We finally, I mean, we are the one minority group that did not survive or was not reflected in Roddenberry's utopian vision of the future. There's the famous story of how Whoopi Goldberg watched the original series, and just by Nichelle Nichols' mere presence on the bridge, she had hope that she would survive into the future. She saw herself reflected and said, "Oh my God, we made it. I can, there is something to strive for. There's no reason to give up. We're going to get there." Gay people didn't have that. We were the only group that didn't have that. So when it finally happened, I thought, I need to do something. So I decided to throw a party. And I was already going to be at the Vegas convention doing interviews. My background is in entertainment journalism. So I've been fortunate enough over the last almost 2 decades to have interviewed all the Star Trek actors at various points over the years. So I've gotten to know most of them pretty well. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to be there anyway. Let's throw a party, see if anybody comes. I have no idea if anyone's going to care as much as I do, but it doesn't cost me anything to do the planning, so let me try. When we got there, I had asked Nana Visitor, who plays Major Kira on Deep Space Nine, I had asked her if she could come by and be our celebrity guest for the night. And she said, Dan, I can probably only come for about 20 minutes. I said, oh my God, that's amazing. Just having you there at all will mean the world to us. Thank you. She stayed for 3.5 hours because she had so much fun. The crowd that showed up was probably, I'd say, about, I don't know, 10 times larger than what I was expecting. And everyone who came just had the atmosphere in the place was just so positive and reaffirming and loving that everyone had a great time. So the next day, I got a lot of people asking, "Oh my God, when's the next one? When's the next one?" People, including Nana. And I thought, "Oh my God, I guess there are going to be more. I guess this is what I do now." Okay, because I had really only planned for it to be a one-off celebration because I felt like something had to be done to at least commemorate in some small way this huge moment. And as of this month, we're just a little over a year now, and we've done 12 parties in cities all across the country. We've done New York, LA, Vegas, Chicago, Albany, San Francisco, a bunch of others that I'm forgetting now. But we've gone all over, and the response, I'm really, really happy to say, has been, I'd say, about 90% universally positive and happy that we're doing it. Tons of the Star Trek actors have come out. Um, Particularly the Deep Space Nine cast seems to have been the most into it. But we've had people from Voyager, from Enterprise, from TNG. We've had representatives from each series, with the exception of the original. But the last party we did, Nichelle Nichols actually wanted to come. And it was one of those moments where at the end of the day, she was going to decide if she felt up to it or not. But unfortunately, that day she didn't, so she wasn't able to come. But she may be coming to a future one, which would be kind of amazing. Um, so, yeah, so this thing really just kind of came out of this idea for the one event to celebrate this big moment in history, and now I'm running with it. And we're in the process of filing to become a 501c nonprofit, and things are in motion for next year. We already have 4 more events planned. We're working on, in fact, I was hoping to hear today, getting a spot on the Star Trek cruise in January. I mean, it's hosted by George, so why wouldn't you want to have a Gays in Space night?
Right.
I mean, well, it's hosted by George, so every night is going to be pretty much Gays in Space. But we're hoping that we'll be invited to be on that, and we're also expanding to Comic Cons now. So fingers crossed, you'll be able to see us at San Diego Comic Con and WonderCon and Anaheim, and hoping to grow from there.
God, that's so cool. Because, I've talked on the show a lot before. I'm sure people will be seeing this who haven't heard my podcast before. One of the things that I love so much about Star Trek is that it's a vision of the future where, like, it's not only cool, like, it's not only okay if you're different, but in a lot of ways it's really freaking cool that you're different, right? That makes you interesting, and it makes it's something to be celebrated, right? And there are a couple of episodes where that gets worked in, where you can tell, like, they were making obvious allusions to the subject, but because of the politics of the companies involved and the censors and all that fun stuff, they weren't really able to be overt about it. And one of my favorite stories is the Outcast, in the episode of Next Generation where Riker falls in love with a member of an androgynous race. She turns out to be a woman, so on and so forth. And I remember reading something where Jonathan Frakes had said that he had actually wished that the actors that played that species were men, because he thought that it would make a bigger statement if Riker had fallen in love with a man, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
So in my mind, Riker is canonically bi. Like, that's just at least. So, like, I'm just making that judgment. Just making that judgment. But seeing things like that, and then in seeing the kiss between Dax and Lenara Khan on DS9, and the one-off reference to a guy being pregnant, it was like 10 seconds of the B story and an episode of DS9, but they're talking about a guy being pregnant, right? And I know, what's that?
I think his name was Vidix Prawn.
Yes, absolutely. And it was,
and he was budding.
yeah, and it was the DS9 episode that everyone hates, where Kira gets stuck in that stone thing. Right. And it's during the B story where Nog is applying to Starfleet Academy, which is, like, I think the B story in that episode is better than the A story.
I agree. Yeah.
But I know trans guys who want to get pregnant, and that's a thing that they struggle with, because there's that societal stigma of, like, well, you want to be a guy but you want to get pregnant, like that ridiculous societal pressure of what a man is, what a woman is, and I don't even know if the thinking was on that level, like if they were thinking about poking at gender stereotypes in that way. I don't know if that was purposeful or not, but just seeing that, and there was like, God, they're thinking about me, I think people really underestimate the power of being able to see yourself in media, because most people have no problem finding themselves somewhere, but queer people, trans people, it's just, it wasn't there, especially in the 90s. And so, me being a kid, growing up in the early and late '90s, knowing that I was different, being really scared to talk about it, like that was a world in which I knew I could exist, right? Just like you were saying with Whoopi Goldberg. So that's awesome. So, tell me, I mean, what's your favorite, personal moment in Star Trek? Because I mean, there are allusions to it scattered throughout, and I'm just curious, are there any particular ones that resonate with you?
There, oh God, yeah, there are so many. It's
Literally all of them is the answer
yeah,
for me.
pretty much all of them. It's so funny. I talked to Ira Stephen Bear from Deep Space Nine when he was filming the documentary "What We Left Behind" during the San Francisco convention last year. And the idea behind, he was interviewing me, and the idea behind the interview was supposed to be me giving the gay fan perspective. But I just kept talking about Star Trek in general and never even mentioned the gay thing until we got to like the very last question. And Ira, I mean, it was a great interview. We had a great time talking, and I think we talked about some really interesting things. But I just I hadn't steered the conversation to the gay question the way that I think he was expecting. So his last question was, "All right, Dan, it's your last chance. Is there anything else you want to talk about?" And I was like, "Oh, that's right, gay, right? Yes, gays in space. Okay." And so I think it's so interesting that when I get into conversations about Star Trek, it is so rare that my mind goes to the moments that you're talking about, the moments that alluded to it was basically using the sci-fi twist to be able to tell a gay story. You couldn't have a woman and a woman together just because they loved each other. It had to be, okay, well, he's a worm who used to be a boy, and she's a worm who used to be a girl, and they were married like boys and girls are supposed to be married.
Right.
Now they just happen to be in different bodies, so it's okay. So moments like that, I always, when I saw them, I would think, yes, I know what they want to say. It's a shame they're not allowed to say it just outright yet. But it was a very good feeling. I completely agree with you. It was a good feeling when I saw those things because that was the writers of the show, the producers of the show, and oftentimes the actors too. The actors were huge proponents over the years to have a gay character and to have gay representation. But they were never, until this most recent movie, they weren't able to do it other than in these subtle, again, sci-fi twist kind of ways. Um, a very specific moment, and this is not gay at all, but one of my favorite moments in Deep Space Nine was towards I think it was in the seventh season, in that final arc where Bashir and O'Brien are trapped inside Sloane's mind, and the episode is really just the two of them kind of going back and forth and being the friends that they are. And then there's the scene where Bashir admits that he likes O'Brien a little bit more than he does Esri. And O'Brien won't admit that he really likes Bashir more than he likes Keiko. He's like, listen, I love my wife. I love my way. Yeah, we get it, but you really love him a little bit more. And even though it wasn't gay in any way, shape, or form, it was a completely natural, like brother kind of love that they had for each other that they admitted kind of exceeded the expected romantic love with their female, partners. So that always sticks out in my mind as one of my favorite moments. In fact, at one of the Gays in Space parties, we played that on the big screen to like get the party started. It was one of the ones that Nana was at, and by the end, I mean, she was howling, she was laughing so hard. Yeah, so if I had to pick out a moment, I think that would be the one.
God, and O'Brien and Bashir, in my opinion, that's the best relationship in all of Star Trek. Like
They were pretty great, yeah.
the scene where they're drunk in O'Brien's quarters, and they're singing, and Bashir's all angry because he got just um, the the woman who got valedictorian over him.
Right.
just like walked right past him.
Yeah.
And so they're drunk and he's depressed. And it's just, yeah, because there's never really a friendship like that in Star Trek. Because like when I think about Star Trek, I think about the adventures and all of that, and especially in Next Generation. But if I think about the characters themselves, I'm like, and I hate saying this, this is going to sound worse than I mean it to sound, but like in a lot of ways, some of the characters are kind of one dimensional, right? And not necessarily one dimensional in a bad way, but you don't really see like a really genuine friendship like
Right.
that. Like you get a little bit of it between Geordi and Data, but there's not really anything that's super genuine like that. And I love that. I love that relationship so much.
Yeah. That's also in that scene. That's great when O'Brien said, "Listen, people either love you or they hate you. When I first met you, I hated you."
Right.
And then there's this pause, and Bashir's like, "And now?" He said, "And now I don't." You know, like he doesn't say, "And now I love you," but everybody knows that he does. Yeah,
So
that's a great.
good. I wonder, you mentioned earlier about how when you think back to the moments that you really love, you don't necessarily go to the gay moments. And and I kind of do,
Mhm.
but I wonder if the reason for that is because I mean, in the context of the 24th century or the 23rd century, I mean, we're hoping that by then it's not even a thought, right? Like somebody grows up and they say, like, "Oh, I'm a guy who likes guys." Okay, cool. Let's go to the holodeck. Like, like not a big deal,
I've
right?
got the program for you.
Right. But I wonder, is that the reason why you think maybe you don't go to those moments because just thinking in that context, like it's not that big of a deal then. It's only a big deal now.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I think the other part is probably that I had, on some level, just accepted the fact that we weren't there, that we weren't directly represented, because I understood the times, and that it wasn't a conscious effort on Star Trek's part to exclude us. It was censors and networks and small-minded people who just were just woefully ignorant, and their edification took quite some time. And I think I just knew that the chances of me seeing myself there were pretty small. But I love the universe. I love the Roddenberry philosophy. I love what that is about in its purest, truest form. So I think I must have just, yeah, said, I get it. I know why we're not there, so I'm not even going to look. Although, I don't know. Because I did notice every time we were mentioned, even in the slightest, I, whoa, what is that? Oh. So, yeah. And I think that, because a lot of people have talked about, the fact that it's a non-issue now, which I agree, it's a non-issue. It should always have been, and should always be. But a non-issue doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. I think that's the part that a lot of people get a little mixed up with. When I've asked the question, why were there no gay people in Star Trek? People would say, well, it's a non-issue, so you just, it's not a big deal. It's like, yeah, but where are the people
Right.
that are like, you would see it when Troy would be romantically involved with a guy. It's like, oh, okay, well, there's the if there were these magical gay people running around, how come no one ever went on a date? How come? I'm not saying it has to be the centerpiece, but the argument that it's a non-issue, that's why you never see it, I think I think that's a kind of a little bit of a convenient cop out for the people who made the shows, to be able to say, like, look, you guys were there. Nah, trust me, you were there.
Yeah.
But were we?
And so talk to me about how you feel the way that it was handled in the latest movie and now in Discovery. I mean, it is 'cause I know for me when I saw that moment in the movie, it seemed perfect to me because they didn't draw attention to it. Like Sulu walks off the ship, his husband's there, they hug each other, and they just walk off. Like it's not something that's called any special attention to, but like obviously, it was a signal to me finally that like my people are there. So.
Right. Um, it's interesting. I've found that uh, the gay community is in an interesting place when it comes to minority representation on Star Trek, because when you look at it truthfully, there's a ladder, and there were certain things that needed to happen first. We needed, when Deep Space Nine came out, having a black captain was a major step forward in civil rights, and that was fantastic. Voyager now having a female captain. Oh my God, that's great. Next in line was us, the gay people. We were next. We
Right.
waited in line, and we really expected to have a gay character on Enterprise. That was the step forward that that show should have made. And, there's a lot of talk back and forth about how they thought they were going to do it. So Reed was originally going to be gay, but then they lost their nerve and they went back on it. But whatever whatever the reasoning was, we missed our shot. And at that time, it would have been a huge deal to have had a gay character in Star Trek, and it would have it would have necessitated a greater screen presence and more time, and it again would have been a big deal. So many years have passed since then that the rest of society and a lot of entertainment has already taken that step. Star Trek is so far behind the curve on gay rights. It's sad. It really is. So the first time we see an openly gay character on Star Trek, society has already told us it's not a big deal. So don't make a big deal out of it. But we kind of missed our shot for it to be a bigger deal because of the timing. So when I watched that scene from the perspective of someone living today, I think that was perfect. I mean, personally, I would have added a kiss. I would have added with the hug, I would have added a kiss. I don't think that would have been, drawing too much attention to it or whatever. It just seemed like you've been away, and, all these things have happened. You don't know if you're going to survive. You're out in space. The first time you see your husband and your daughter, you're going to kiss them both. It's just, I feel like that would have been a natural thing to have happened. But I like the way that they did it from that perspective. I'm just a little sad that we didn't get our shot for it to have been a bigger deal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe I hadn't thought of it that way just because like I love Star Trek so much. I like go out of my way to find reasons to not be disappointed with it. um, but yeah, like I mean, I never thought of it that way, and maybe it's because I don't dislike Enterprise, but it's probably my least favorite of the series. So I don't know that I was really thinking of it in those terms, because I was just like I was hoping for it to be incredible, and I thought it was good but not great. Um, and yeah, I mean, I never really thought of it that way before. That's
Yeah, I've spent some time. I've spent some time
yeah.
about this.
And so what about in Discovery? What do you think about what's going on there?
I think it is fantastic. I was so surprised when, because I knew there had to be a gay character. If they were going to do a new series, there had to be a gay character this time around. And there was just no way around it. But what I was expecting, so I heard Anthony Rapp had been cast and he was going to play an openly gay man. I said, fantastic, great. That's all I expected. Having a love interest right from the start, that blew me away, because I just, I don't know, cynically thought they're going to do it because they know they have to, but they're not going to really do anything with it. They're going to be, oh, look, there's the gay guy who never gets laid. Okay, cool, yeah, sure. But for them to right out of the gate give him a love interest and that is so, I mean, I love that relationship between those two characters, and the actors play it so beautifully that I was so impressed, so impressed. And the when they do finally kiss, when we have our first male kiss on Star Trek, I mean, it's in the fall finale episode. So, up until then, it was just understood. Oh, okay, they're together. It was never. But when they finally kiss in that episode, it is so well earned a moment that I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was beautifully done.
That's I think I agree. I think I agree. My dilemma at this point with Star Trek is like we need a trans character because, that's where I'm at. And but then of course I'm thinking to myself, if medical technology is what we think it should be in the 24th century, or the 23rd century, I think I think it would be one of those things where a kid would come out as trans, and the medical intervention would be so good that it would never have to be commented on after that. So like,
Oh, that's really, I'd never even thought of.
right.
Wow.
So my question is, because obviously one thing we don't want to do with representation is we don't want to tokenize people, right? We don't want to like beat somebody over the head with, here's our token trans, you know? Um, but I do think it would be important commentary, to let the universe kind of know that yes, we do exist in that world.
Yeah.
So like I've been given some thought to how that would work out, because I think just like with being gay, it would be tough that you wouldn't really be able to comment on it, because again, it wouldn't be anything to be commented on. It would
Right.
just be, you just have to be like some one-off conversation about like, oh yeah, I had this thing done when I was a kid, and like it was, no big deal after that.
God, that would be so interesting to see. Yeah, I never thought of that. But would that, because my experience with the gay community is limited pretty much to gay men because that's just the category I fall in.
Right.
And so I am still learning about the trans experience and learning just even the most simplistic things of proper pronoun use and really trying to understand. um, and I don't think a gay person can understand, I don't think a straight person can understand a gay person's struggle when they're a kid because there's no real point of reference that they could possibly have. And I feel the same when it comes to binary sexuality. I've never had to, not that I've never had to, I've never had any inclination to consider it or to think about it. And I wonder if, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, because and I'm learning. So,
You're
I,
good.
uh, would wouldn't there be trans people who in the future wouldn't want the complete gender reassignment,
Yeah.
in, like the non in a non-binary sense?
Yep.
There are members of the trans community who would be perfectly fine staying in the body that they were born in, but living the life of the opposite sex. Is that
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Well, and I think that might be the opportunity to do it, right? Because I mean, there are plenty of trans people who don't want surgery, who don't want hormones, and it's a thing about outward presentation and the way that people address you and speak to you and stuff. So I guess it could work that way. And then of course, non-binary folks, people who don't identify on either side of the binary. I guess that would work too. And
Right.
and I guess maybe thinking forward like that, I would almost think there would be even more people who identify as non-binary. Now that I think about it, just because I have to imagine there's so much less pressure to fit into those prescribed gender roles.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, that's something they comment on in Next Gen. When Beverly Crusher's talking about wearing makeup,
Mhm.
and and then the episode with Odan, with the trill,
Mhm.
the primitive version of the trill, when
Right.
and that's another great moment where, yeah.
Oh, they had the prosthetics that, thank God, they didn't do to Terry Farrell.
Right. um, but well, and then there's I think it's in the poker game where Worf says something about women being weak,
Mhm.
and they're like, well, we're supposed to be past that whole thing by now. And of course, everybody thinks they're past it now, when like nobody's really past it now.
Right. Right.
So yeah, that's interesting. And weird is I hadn't even thought about that. I guess just because again, thinking from my own experience as somebody who did want surgery and did pursue surgery and has, been on hormones and, jumped from ostensibly on one side of the binary to the complete opposite side. So I guess I was more thinking in those terms. But yeah, I mean, I would have to imagine.
That would
So
be that would be such an interesting futuristic conversation to see between a character who had gone through complete gender reassignment as a child, and then they meet, or they are teamed up with or partnered with or whatever a person who chose not to be. And that conversation about, okay, well, why didn't you if you had I mean, I think an episode like that on Star Trek would do more to educate the public on trans issues than anything else that could happen. That
oh,
on
we got to make that happen.
that would be so God, that would be so great because I think a lot of people. What I had a guy come to the Gaze in Space table that we had at one of the Star Trek conventions, and he he came over and said, "Oh, I really." And this was a guy who was clearly like middle America, red state, cowboy hat, like the whole thing. So when he came over to chat, because of course I have my preconceived notions and biases that I shouldn't but do. So when he came over to chat, I was surprised initially, and he was just kind of chatting, and the conversation eventually went to. He said, "Yeah, my son is trans, and wants to be a woman, is going through the whole thing." I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Yeah, and I just don't." It's amazing over a table of T-shirts the conversations that you have with people.
Yeah.
But he was like, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. And we had this very honest exchange where I was very open and said, look, I can't fully explain because it's not my experience, but I would imagine that, uh, just being open to learning more and understanding where she's coming from would be the thing that could help to repair their relationship because they had become estranged. And I said to him, I said, look, if she's going to be fair to you, then she has to forgive that you, every now and then, or maybe all the time, continue to refer to her as him or he or son, or as long as you're very clear with her that you're trying to understand and you're trying to relieve your ignorance, you're trying to learn. Um, I really feel like that, and I have no idea what happened with their relationship, but I feel like it's the trans community is a segment of the population with next to zero um, pop culture exposure. The common man, unless you're looking for it, unless you diligently look for it to learn more, to hear stories from trans people and to try to understand their experience, unless you seek it out, it is not just going to pop up on your television or in the popcorn blockbuster movie that you see on the weekend. You really have to seek it out, and I would love to see that change. And for God's sake, Star Trek, get back to the front of the pack.
Right.
Do it first.
Right.
Orange is the New Black does an amazing job
Mm-hmm.
exploring the issues, but it's that fact of being in the future where there's already been a good outcome that adds to the storytelling that makes it, I think, easier for people to understand and relate to personally. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Next time I run into those Discovery people, I'm gonna plant that in their brains.
You totally should. Totally should. And give them my phone number so they can call me because I'd be happy to be a consultant.
Absolutely.
uh, um, and I think that's an important thing. Going back to the whole idea of representation. Um, I've talked about this on the show before, and I think that the most salient example of this to me is Star Trek because it's, as far as media and pop culture goes, it's the thing that's the most important to me for a lot of reasons. And growing up, I'm 10, 12 years old, and using the crude terminology that I knew. Basically, I was like, well, I'm a boy, but I want to be a girl, and it just knowing on one level, like, that's not an okay thing. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, if I tell the kids at school this, they're gonna be absolutely merciless. And who knows what's gonna happen if I tell my family, if I tell my teachers, any of that kind of stuff. And so, in a lot of ways, the world was a really scary place for me. But looking at Star Trek, even though we weren't there, like, we didn't see trans people, but given the commentary that they made on race, and the limited commentary that they gave on sexuality and on gender and that kind of stuff, like, it was easy for me as a kid to leap to a place where, like, okay, I'm actually seeing a possibility where these fears don't have to exist, where,
Mhm.
like, I can feel safe telling people these things. And I just I wish I could communicate to people how important that is, because I mean, I think anybody who has any sort of minority experience, I mean, has a very visceral knowledge of how important it is. But for people who are otherwise in the majority, I don't think it registers. And
Yeah.
and speaking of discovery, I think that was the thing that I got so upset when the trailer came out, and there was all this internet outrage about women being in command and black people being in command, and like, where are the straight white guys? Oh, the only white guy on the show's gay. You know what I mean? And like, and I mean, I'm trans and I'm on the internet, right? So I get some of that myself, which is fine. It's not fine, but I'm used to it. But I felt like they're going after my thing now. You know what I mean? Because most of the time, I think that was that because most of the commentary is around race, right? And even the people who are assholes about sexuality and gender, they're at least they at least make a play at being forward thinking when it comes to race issues, I guess, even though they're probably not as enlightened as they think they are. Um, but I was so angry because I was just, again, I was thinking to myself, like, I know, knowing that because I mean, this was when the trailer came out, this was before anybody had seen an episode. And
Mhm.
I was thinking to myself, like, there's a gay guy on there. I mean, that's not me, but
Mhm.
that's closest to me that I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And like, this is a gay person at least.
Right.
And I held on to that so hard.
Mhm.
And I saw an Asian woman write this really heartfelt blog about the fact that Michelle Yeoh was speaking with her accent,
Mhm.
because that's something that's stigmatized. Like, you're not, you don't sound intelligent if you speak with an accent. So you're supposed to train that out of yourself. But she was speaking with her accent, and that meant a lot to her. And
Yeah.
I've seen so many Black Star Trek fans say that it was amazing to have a main character who is not only Black, but also a Black woman, that it meant so much to them. And it's just like, I mean, it's hitting all of the right notes.
Right.
And, like, I mean, like you said, it a little late to the party. uh, but but still, it's like, oh my god, this is like, for such huge segments of the population who love Star Trek for the same reasons that I do, in terms of race and gender and sexuality, like, this is such a big deal. And all of that internet outrage, like, usually internet outrage doesn't get to me, but when it's targeting Star Trek, there were a couple of days where I was not okay over
Yeah.
this. Like, I was like screenshotting comments and posting on Facebook, like, what, like, just screaming my face off. So I don't know. You have thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, when I saw that, I kind of thought, like, wait a second. Uh, haven't we been through this? Haven't we had oh my God, there was a woman captain. Oh my God, there's a black man in captain in command. Hasn't that been done? Again, with the progression of minority rights and civil rights, like even the I'm trying to think of a word other than dumb, but even the dumbest of people in our country and in the world today should have gotten to the point where they accept that black people are equal to white people and Asian people are equal to Indian people. And everybody's just, color should no longer be a source of any of this, because uh, not that sexuality and all of that should be. It's just that, we've been through it for so long, and people, basically everyone's taken the class. Everyone has taken the class on equality when it comes to race and gender. And I find it amazing that there are people who have somehow managed to fail that class and are still have negative things to say about it. It's just,
Well,
you are
especially in terms of Star Trek. Like people who claim to be Star Trek fans. That, like, in mainstream society, honestly, I get it. It doesn't surprise me. But have you seen any episode other than like the Best of Both Worlds? Like you understand that there are episodes where like space battles aren't the focus, and like, you know what I mean? Like there is substance here. Like, there I mean, the fundamentalist Christian has obviously not watched the episode where Captain Picard called a species losing religion an achievement. Like,
right.
you know what I mean? Like, and that's my thing. Like, have you ever seen the show? Like, you just like, have you just like watched the Dominion War arc and that's the only thing you know? Like, I don't.
Yeah, it's. I agree. It is doubly disappointing when that type of hate speech comes from supposed Star Trek fans, because it just means that they don't get it. They're not Star Trek fans. They might think they are. They may purport to be, but if they don't agree with and fully embrace the edict philosophy, which is what Star Trek is based on, then they're not fans of Star Trek. They don't get it. They're the ones who were there on opening day for Into Darkness because there was a lot of space battles and explosions and stuff. And afterwards, they said, "Yay, I'm a Star Trek fan now." It's like, yeah, calm down. No, because that's not it. But I'm heartened by the fact that at least the creative team behind the new show isn't reflecting that at all. In fact, they are, the first to speak out against people with those views. And I mean, there have been some comments posted on the videos that I put up for Gays in Space. And in particular, I posted the panel that Nana Visitor and I did during the Star Trek convention in Vegas this year, which was a great panel. It was 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, the very first panel of the show, and we filled the room. I was amazed.
Wow.
I had no idea people would show again. I need to be a little more confident in this message, clearly.
Yeah.
But no one's gonna wake up early to come and see me on stage talking. Maybe because Nana's there, they'll whatever. But we had such a great turnout, and such a great discussion and conversation. The panel turned out really, really well. And we videotaped it, so I recently put it up. And some of the comments that I've seen, and I've intentionally not deleted any of them. So far, we haven't gotten anything that's particularly repugnant, but I have gotten comments about, who wants gays in Star Trek? Stay out of Star Trek. I don't want gays in Star Trek, or, comments like that. And it really blows my mind every time I see, because like I said, we've been across the country with this thing in smaller places too, like Parsippany, New Jersey was where one convention was. So we did a party there. And, Albany, we did a party there. And 90% of the response that we get is positive. So when I see that 10%, especially in the form of comments that ostensibly will be there forever attached to this video, and the sentiment is just so the opposite of what Star Trek is about, that's doubly concerning, because these are not people who, if you're going to watch a 45-minute video talking about Star Trek with one actor on stage, like you should be a Star Trek fan. Chances are a regular person is not just going to be like, oh, well, let me watch this for 45 minutes. So, anyone who's watched it is watching it because they think they're fans of Star Trek. But then they say things like that, and it's just, yeah, it's just sad. It's just sad.
The internet is a wonderful and interesting place. Yeah. That's really all I could say about that.
Very true.
Well, tell us where we can find out more about your project online.
Yes. So we have our main website is gaaysinspace.org. So,
and how many A's in each?
3 A's in Gaaays, 3 A's in space.
Got it.
So that's our main website. That's where you can go to find out about upcoming parties. That's where you can buy merch, like the shirt, or maybe a gay tribble.
Oh my God, there's gay tribbles.
There are now. There are now. And you can also, we also have links to, I've done a ton of, as I said earlier, I've done a ton of interviews with the Star Trek cast over the years. And I kind of abused my power a little bit by making sure that regardless of what we were actually talking about in the interview, I threw in a gay Star Trek question, asking, why are there no gay people on Star Trek? And so I've posted those videos on our Gaaays in Space website. So if people want to check those out, those are there. Then you can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and we're starting up our Instagram. There's not much there yet, but all of them are at Gaaays in Space.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. This was so much fun. Any opportunity I get to geek out over Star Trek is going to be one of my favorite things ever. I'll have all of the relevant links in the description box underneath the video, and hopefully I'll see you at a con sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you so much for well, one, knowing that we exist, and two, reaching out and giving me this opportunity to let people know about the group and to be, to be a part of this conversation that, that you're having with the public. I mean, you're doing what I, said I would love to see, which is you're providing information. You're giving people who are not in the know, who want to be, the chance to educate themselves, and that just makes for a better world for everybody. So I have a great admiration and respect for what you're doing. I think it's pretty amazing. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Gosh, thank you.
Hey friends, thanks for watching. Please comment, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this, check out our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to support our mission to enact fully automated gay space communism, you can also head over to patreon.com/thegaytheistmanifesto and make it possible for us to do even more things like this. Love you, friends.